Hi, thanks for joining me. My name is Craig Blitz, and I'm the Director of Product Management for Oracle Coherence. Oracle Coherence fits within Oracle as part of the Cloud Application Foundation, and today I'm going to talk to you about Coherence 12.1.3, which is part of a broader Cloud Application Foundation 12.1.3. And when I mention Cloud Application Foundation, I'm talking about products such as WebLogic Server, Tuxedo, development tools, the plugins for Oracle Enterprise Manager that go along with those tools. And for 12.1.3, we're releasing WebLogic Server and Coherence together as part of a Cloud Application Foundation. And Cloud Application Foundation, and particularly the 12c release, has several goals. Among them, allowing your developers to very quickly deliver a set of next-generation applications targeting mobile apps, targeting the cloud, and bringing that together under a much more efficient, much simpler cloud management story. And with that in mind, we've made several strategic investments around mobility, around developer productivity, density improvements. And by density, I mean how do you deliver your solution using less hardware, using less memory, less compute than you otherwise would need to. Improving operational efficiency, improving high availability and performance. And in delivering all of this as one package, we look to allow you to deliver applications and also internally to deliver Fusion middleware, the products such as SOA, BPM, etc., that all sit on top of Cloud Application Foundation, deliver applications based on these to the public cloud, to on-premises cloud, through engineered systems and through commodity hardware. For Coherence, this is really the second delivery of 12c. The first delivery was called 12.1.2. This is called 12.1.3. In 12.1.2, we brought several features to the market, and two that have been particularly impactful is one is something that we called managed coherence servers. And the goal of that is to simplify the entire life cycle of setting up a coherence cluster, of deploying applications to the cluster, of monitoring that whole application infrastructure. And we did this by leveraging the WebLogic Management Framework. And again, we rolled it up as a feature called Managed Coherence Servers. The second feature, and one that has really taken off in terms of popularity in the market, is called Oracle Coherence GoldenGate HotCache. A mouthful. I'll just call it HotCache. And what this allows you to do is when you have a application that changes the database, but you're caching data in front of that database, you have this problem all of a sudden that your data in your cache is now out of sync with data in the database. And GoldenGate allows you to automatically update the cache whenever changes are made in your database. So in effect, this is bringing you real-time database updates from the database up into your application tier by putting them in coherence caches. Now, let me transition to 12.1.3 now and talk about some of the new features that are in 12.1.3. Some of the goals I mentioned earlier were one around developer agility or developer productivity, and two of our very big features in 12.1.3 are focused squarely at that and around standardization of access to coherence, of the APIs in coherence. The first one is based on JSR 107, otherwise known as JCache. And JSR 107 is one of the oldest JSRs around. It was finally passed by the expert group this year. It was passed unanimously. Oracle, Brian Oliver on the Coherence team was a co-spec lead of that JSR. And we're supporting that fully in Coherence 12.1.3. Now, I'll talk about some of the benefits of that, but first I also want to introduce a second new feature, and that one is support for the Memcached API or protocol. Memcached has been a de facto standard for unclustered caching, and we're bringing that to Coherence as well. And the reason that I want to talk about them together is that the benefit of running Coherence underneath JCache API or underneath Memcached, very similar. And that is that although you have a standard API, the implementation under it is extremely different if you go from one vendor to another. And if you use the implementation that's in Coherence 12.1.3, of course you get to take advantage of all the great features of Coherence on the server side. So you get to take advantage of our HA capabilities. You get to take advantage of things like HotCache, which I just mentioned to you before. You get to take advantage of some of the features that are on our roadmap that I'll mention briefly a little bit later. And what this means for current application developers is that if they're comfortable with Memcached, if they already have applications on Memcached, they can just move them over to Coherence and leverage all the benefits. Now, JSR 107 or JCache is a much more advanced API that allows you to do things like processing on the data grid, what we in Coherence call entry processors, and in fact that's what it's called in the JSR itself. So I think both of these give you a way of accessing Coherence through either a de facto standard or through the actual standard for Java, and do so in a way that leverages all the goodness of Coherence. Now, along the lines of developer productivity, we're also introducing a JVisual VM plugin for Coherence that allows you to dig into what's going on within a Coherence process. So you'll be able to look at the caches, the services, the various threads, and get a feel for what's going on within your Coherence JVMs. And this is through using standard tooling that's provided as part of the JVM. And in fact, this is downloadable now in what we call the Coherence community. And you can run it against older Coherence clusters. It works going back to Coherence 3.5, in fact. But we think that's going to greatly simplify the life of your developer that wants more insight into what's going on in the Coherence cluster. We also have some new features that address availability concerns. One of them is what we call asynchronous index creation. And this is when you're rebalancing a Coherence cluster, say you've lost a member and you need to promote a backup partition to be primary. Now, all of a sudden, there's lots of activity going on the Coherence cluster, and your latency may suffer until you're fully recovered. What we've done, one of the big barriers to fully balancing your cluster is that we have to recreate indexes. So what we've done in 12.1.3 is we've made that index creation asynchronous, whereas it used to be synchronous. And the net effect of that is to reduce your mean time to recovery, or MTTR. Also on Exalogic, on our engineered system, we've added a new library for our InfiniBand message bus. Now this library brings new scalability benefits to Exalogic, but it's also been hardened tremendously over previous releases of InfiniBand message bus. One of the more challenging things that we've run into in the course of our Exalogic testing is that there's a lot of complication in terms of how you recover from various types of failure. We recently had a case where a router failed on us and we had to recover. There was an SLA that we recover in under 60 seconds once that router failed. And there were tremendous interactions between the software and the hardware that occurred during that period. And for us to get it right and to recover correctly and recover quickly took a lot of engineering, and all of that engineering went into the new release of the InfiniBand message bus. We've also added a number of performance and scalability features. We've added asynchronous entry processors. This refers to the ability to target processing at objects within the data grid and do that processing asynchronously. We've always had the ability to do it synchronously. Doing it asynchronously will bring you a whole raft of scalability benefits. Then some smaller or seemingly smaller but impactful changes. We've improved query filter performance by some changes to POF extractors. And we've made elastic data improvements to make it easier to store even more data. And in fact, I've seen deployments of Coherence now around the 20 terabyte range, which was just unheard of, even a release ago. We've also added the ability to do forward compatibility in Coherence 12c. So as you upgrade to newer versions of Coherence, you'll now be able to use newer clients to talk to older clusters, something that was never possible before. You've always been able to use an older client to talk to a newer cluster. And the availability of this feature makes it much easier when you have inter-cluster communication. You want to upgrade one of the clusters before you upgrade the other cluster, and they're both talking to each other. Right? Because they're both talking to each other, obviously you have to talk from older to newer and newer to older. And that's now possible using Coherence 12c. So in total, I've talked about quite a few features that will enhance your developer productivity, bring some unique scalability characteristics to Coherence, and a number of availability features as well. And we view this as just the latest of a series of releases that are going to provide you with continued choice of where you deploy your cloud application foundation or your coherence-based applications, whether it be in the on-premises cloud, a public cloud, hybrid cloud, hybrid on-premises, public, on commodity hardware, or even on Oracle engineered systems. I promised a little bit of a peek ahead, and I'm going to provide a very quick one. We're continuing to invest in a lot of the themes that I've continued to emphasize throughout this talk. Innovative MAA features, MAA being maximal availability architecture features, to allow better multi-data center solutions, better recovery of coherence clusters. We're making massive improvements in developer productivity, both through changes in the coherence infrastructure itself and through support of later JDK8 features. There'll be a raft of new security features that are extremely important as you move to the cloud, of course, but are also important to a lot of our customers facing new types of regulations, new types of standards. And then there will be a big improvement in IT productivity through some of the things we're doing to allow multi-tenancy in coherence-based applications, as well as the next generation of managed coherence servers. So I'd like to thank you all for listening. There's plenty more content on coherence. I would pay attention to coherence on the Oracle Technology Network, that is OTN. And thank you again for listening.